I'll have what she's having.
Nora Ephron's movies defined a generation of romantic comedies, many of which remain classics decades later.
Romantic comedy sometimes comes off as just too sappy, and that really wasn't who Nora was. She was really into things just being real and honest, and I think that still comes through.
Some of Ephron's most famous work premiered in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, what we'll loosely call the Nora Ephron, Meg Ryan rom-com era. In 1989, we saw When Harry Met Sally, starring Ryan, opposite Billy Crystal.
Suppose nothing happens to you. Suppose you lived there your whole life and nothing happens, you never meet anybody, you never become anything, and finally you die, one of those New York deaths but nobody notices for 2 weeks until the smell drifts into the hallway.
We all want to find love, and as Nora said, there's no one more romantic than a cynic.
The story starts with two college classmates sharing a miserable car ride from Chicago to New York, debating whether men and women can be just friends. A decade later, now in their 30s and simultaneously brokenhearted, the two not only become friends, but much, much more.
Really, it was just this wonderful questioning of how men and women both drive each other crazy and also somehow come together and make it work. That was really the beginning. And Nora really adored Meg Ryan. She thought she was super, super smart, obviously incredibly charming. And that became, a lifelong collaboration and friendship.
Sleepless in Seattle hit theaters in 1993. Similarly to When Harry Met Sally, the story begins in Chicago before moving to another city. Both of Ryan's characters were journalists.
You were going to be a gymnast.
A journalist.
Right, that's what I said. And?
I am a journalist. I work at the news.
Which is no coincidence.
When we think about Nora Ephron, she was first and foremost a reporter. There was some really wonderful writing and reporting happening at the magazines at the time where writers got to have a voice and they got to kind of contextualize the news. So that's kind of how Nora came through journalism as her first career before transitioning into screenplays. So she kind of has that wonderful mix of a modern take on love while also being rooted in the classics.
The film centers around a man who lost his wife and a son determined to see his father happy again. Tom Hanks, who plays Sam Baldwin, is so sad he can't sleep, earning the Sleepless in Seattle nickname. He also earns the affection of Annie, who asks him to meet despite never having met.
Dear Sleepless in Son, I have never written a letter like this in my life.
That's what everyone writes at the beginning of letters to strangers.
In the final scene of the film, the stars align, and Annie, Sam, and his son meet atop the Empire State Building on Valentine's Day.
This was really Nora's way of paying homage to the golden age of Hollywood, An Affair to Remember, and a movie called Love Affair. It's really about being in love in the movies.
Shall we?
On to You've Got Mail, where, like in Sleepless in Seattle, Ryan and Hanks fall for each other without really knowing the other's true identity for the bulk of the story.
Meet.
The plotline centers around Kathleen Kelly and her small, charming bookshop that she inherited from her mom, and there are lots of references to Ephron's relationship with her own mother.
You really see how much her mom was an influence, even from little teeny tiny details like the ruby slipper that Kathleen Kelly puts on the Christmas tree. Obviously, that's a throwback to Wizard of Oz, which was one of her favorite series growing up.
Unwrapping funky ornaments made of popsicle sticks and missing my mother so much I almost couldn't breathe.
Also using Over the Rainbow in the culminating moment.
Brinkley!
Somewhere.
Brinkley!
She gave us hope. She made us feel like everything was going to be all right. And it feels like coming out of COVID and everything else that we have going in the world, we just so need and want that warmth and that comfort. And so it's not surprising that her films live on.
Troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you